Hello, hello, everyone. We are back again. And this week we're talking about stress and teen girls. And I'll just do a brief intro. I am Dr. Pamela Ellis. This is Simone's speech. And we both are counselors at Compass College Advisory, where we partner with busy parents to help their teen find a college that feels like home without overpaying. And the conversation that we've been having over the last couple of weeks is around stress and girls. And last time we talked about self-compassion and teen girls. And there's been so much talk, Simone, about this CDC report that came out that talks about just the heightened and alarming stress among teen girls. And that's something we had already been seeing.
Yep.
Yeah. Well before COVID,
exactly.
we had already been seeing that. And your personal development program, really, has been kind of a driving program, if you will, in terms of addressing, all of the stress that girls are going through. And so I, am eager to just kind of jump in on this conversation and, just if you can share with everyone, just what is it that you're seeing in terms of, the girls who are playing volleyball, some of the stresses that you see in terms of athletes?
Right. So with any athlete, I think that stress management is kind of shoved to the bottom of their priorities because they think that, oh, I'm playing my sport. Like, I love it. That helps me relieve my stress. And it's like, not quite. Like, a lot of times it's actually contributing to it.
Yeah.
And the conversation that I have with my girls is actually identifying physical signs of stress, because a lot of times athletes struggle to know the difference between the physical pains from their sport and physical pains from their body being stressed out. And it's a really, I think, eye-opening conversation for them, because as athletes, usually you're kind of always in pain. And you always associate it with, oh, it was practice yesterday. And it's like, probably not.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so definitely a super eye-opening conversation, even if you're not an athlete. And I always like to ask people, like, Dr. Pamela, how do you manage your stress?
Don't ask me that. I actually manage it by running. And when you said that, I'm thinking like, okay, is running really doing it, or is it exacerbating it? But that's literally what I do. And, I have a mindfulness practice as well. And I am constantly, I would say in this flow of how do I manage it down? How do I manage things down? Because, the nature of our work is we're with teens all the time. And if they see us stressing, what does that do for them? So I feel like I have to stay calm and manage it down. Manage it down. Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing, because even like when I was playing, and for example, my hips started getting really tight. And I couldn't explain it. Like, I never necessarily had that problem. I was like, oh, maybe I squatted too deep on the rack last week. And when I tell you, the week our season ended, my hips stopped hurting. Come to find out, you can actually hold stress. That's like one of the main places that women hold stress, to their hips.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that.
And the first time that I really started to pay attention to it was in college, because there was a week I woke up and I had like a nasty headache right in the back of my head. And I was taking Tylenol, wasn't working. I was sleeping up, wasn't working. And I went to the doctor because I started to get sick. And the doctor stood behind me and put her two thumbs in the back of my head. And it was like, it felt like a balloon was releasing. And she was like, you need to relax. I was like, what do you mean? Like, your stress built up in your neck. You
Wow.
gotta manage that better. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Hmm.
Mhm.
Wow. Um, you've said a couple of things, but certainly one of the things I want to go back to is just kind of what you're saying to the girls as far as ways that they can manage stress and recognizing the difference in athletic pain versus stress pain.
Mhm. I think the way that I noticed it, it was when I slowed down. And so,
Mm,
like a lot of my girls, they say they relieve stress by lifting weights and by,
yeah.
moving around all the time. And
Hmm.
I was like, so how are you feeling when you stop? Like when you just let your mind kind of wander, like what are you wandering to?
Yeah.
And that'll
Hmm.
usually lead you to one, what you're stressed out about. And then it'll kind of connect the dots between like, wow, like once that
Yeah.
stress starts to bubble up, like what's hurting? Like where does the stress
Hmm.
go? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then what is it you say in terms of how to relieve it?
Hmm. I usually tell them to do something so out of the ordinary in their regular day by
Hmm.
themselves. Because a lot of times they'll be like,
Mm,
oh, I like to hang out with friends. I'm like, that can actually be really stressful too.
yeah.
Because you're giving so much energy, even though sometimes it doesn't always feel
Hmm.
like it, but like you're
Hmm.
giving your energy to other people when you really need it for yourself. And you can't
Yeah.
necessarily do that full evaluation if you're hanging out with
Hmm.
people all the time, going places all the time.
Right. And
Hmm.
the thing that comes to mind for me when you say do something by yourself, a lot of times what they may be doing by themselves is looking at their phones.
Yep.
And that's really, um, that can really exacerbate stress,
Oh yeah.
I think. And it's, what are those things you can do that are not connected to your phone,
Hmm.
connected to social media? And
Right.
so, I
I,
mean, go ahead.
no, I was saying it can exacerbate your stress, but it can also be a distraction from actually figuring out like what's wrong or like
Right,
processing your stress.
right, right. And
Mhm.
for any of you who are listening, if you have a tip that you can post in the chat, I would love to know what you do about this in terms of getting your daughters away from their phone,
Mhm.
and what are
Mhm.
some things that have worked in terms of other things that they could do that's not
Yeah.
connected with their phone, something that they could do alone that works for
Right.
managing stress. I think that's something we'd all like to know.
Mhm.
Um, when my, daughter was younger and she didn't have a phone, and that was kind of my way of controlling it. And so it's a little different now.
Mhm.
Um, and so maybe that doesn't always work because we do need phones in emergency situations, but they get tied to them very
Yeah.
quickly.
Honestly, the phone, that could be a whole other LinkedIn Live, especially the time that I grew up. It was like I
Hmm.
think I had my first phone in the fourth grade. It was a flip phone, and it was just call my mom. But even going through the time of like growing up
Yeah.
with Instagram and TikTok and like coming of age
Hmm.
with it,
Yeah.
is still so different from like the
Hmm.
teenagers now when it's just their
Yeah.
whole lives. Like I remember
Exactly.
the time when it didn't exist.
I know. I know. And so it is different when you've always known it to exist
Right.
and how you interact with it.
Hmm.
Um, I would think too that there are, some other layers to what is actually stressing our
Hmm.
teens. And is there anything that you've been hearing from
Um,
the girls that you're working with?
Honestly, the biggest thing that I've been hearing outside of stress from just being busy, like school,
Hmm.
sports, all those things, are actually stress from adults. So like teachers and coaches and parents. And I think a lot of people don't really realize when, like, if I'm stressed out about something, that can actually like seep into the people that are around me. And I think teenagers in particular pick up on it a lot quicker than we as adults do. Like, we're older, I think we're better at shutting people out. Teenagers aren't really good at that yet.
Yeah. That's interesting you would bring that up. I certainly see it, just in our clients, how, parents may be stressing them, or even when other family members may be asking, where are you going to go to college? And I would think that, with some of our girls who are athletes, it's, where are you going to play? And the pressure around playing D1 or playing in college at any level adds another level of stress. And especially if they don't want to do that.
Yep.
And you and I, have seen that, I think, with some of our girls, who are playing a sport all through high school. They've been playing it since they were younger. And now in senior year, they're just like, no, I don't want to play in college.
That burnout is real. It is real. And no one talks about it.
Right.
No one talks about it.
Yeah.
And it can be crippling. It can be very crippling.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It can be.
Especially if you don't know how to manage, like, identify what it is, manage it, and you think that you're just supposed to suffer,
Yeah. And I think what you just outlined are the key steps. First is identifying it. And then secondly, having ways to manage the stress. And so that's real good.
Yeah.
Real good.
I do have a question for you.
For me.
I know you said because I know you said you run to relieve your stress, but do you have like physical tells of when you're stressed out?
Nothing that I readily recognize. I think that when I'm stressed, it's a lot more of being distracted and worry. Worry. That's what I recognize is the anxiety.
So maybe you're not so maybe you are good at managing it, because I know that if it gets to a point where it is physical, that means you're like your brain tried to tell you, and now your brain's like, okay, like you don't want to listen to me, like it's a punch in the gut.
Yeah. Probably it doesn't get to the physical manifestation, because I will go running. I will go into nature. And the other thing I do is have a lot of light around me.
Yeah.
And that helps me in managing it, because I don't go into a dark space.
Right.
Yep. And then there's usually always music going on. There's music in the background now that I'm listening to. And that just kind of changes the whole atmosphere. So
that's really good.
Yeah. One of the things that we were going to talk about next, and this will be for another episode, is body image, or would that be the title
body
of it?
language?
Yeah.
Body image, the difference.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I want to thank all of you for joining in to this conversation. And last time when we talked, we were talking about the brunch, and I just want to let you all know that we did postpone the brunch. And so we're still very excited about bringing it. We'll be bringing it to the Columbus market in Chicago. in the upcoming months. And so still very excited about that. But we wanted to still have this conversation anyway, in terms of talking about teen girls, because that's not something that's temporal. It's just not any, it's not an event per se, but something that's ongoing for all of us who have daughters. So one of the things that we do have upcoming, though, is College Prep Made Easy, and definitely want to invite you all to check that out. It's coming up in the upcoming weeks, and we're going to have a great time with that. So please go to collegeprepmadeeasy.com, and we will look forward to seeing you next time. So take care.